What's going on, everyone? It is the day before release of the new MacBooks, and the initial reviews and benchmarks are out from most of the popular YouTubers. And so, what I wanted to make this video on is just a TL didn't watch of all their YouTube reviews and basically sum up what they had to say. So, let's just put in the table format and basically check out the benchmarks right now. So here's just a simple table format pulled from Engadget. So one of the things that they reviewed is just the 14-inch M2 Max version. And if we take a look at some of the benchmarks, you'll see here that it's performing better than the Apple M1 Ultra. Of course, these are just synthetics, but um, I'll do my own impressions for real life testing. But as I always have found through looking at YouTubers, I find that Dave 2D does the most. Um, in-depth reviews. So let's just go take a look at some of the benchmarks he has provided and give my thoughts on those. So let's just do some impressions from Dave 2D of what he puts out here with the Geekbench, GFX Bench, and Tomb Raider. This compares the CPU, the GPU, and then of course testing both in a real world application, which that application is gaming. Now just looking at the Tomb Raider bench, this is what is expected from the M2 Max versus the M1 Max, getting that performance. And he does compare it to a 3080. But I would say the trade offs between Windows and gaming is that though Windows typically run games better in terms of input lag, latency, in my perspective, you could get good FPS from running these MacBooks. Another thing to consider is that the M2 Pro version gets 60 FPS, so that if this is the laptop that you people want to get and like gaming at 60 FPS, just keep that in mind that this is going to be running at 60 FPS compared to the ProMotion that is at 120 hertz. Later on in the video, he does put out some content that it's the previous generation 1416 core versus 1416 M2 Max. So we could use this to see what last year's generation is, but then also see the difference in the M2 Max. There was no testing between the 30 core M2 Max, which is the standard config, versus bumping up to $200 to go to 38 core. Maybe some other YouTubers will do it, but you could probably glean from the core count, you'll probably get an 8% difference. But taking a look at what we have here from the last generation, you're getting about 2 to 1 minute difference. Comparing 14-inch to 14-inch, that will be the yellow lines versus the red lines. You go from the top, Blender goes 10 minutes down a minute to 9:38. Again, similar 10 to 9, and then 77 FPS and Tomb Raider to 83. So it's a 6% difference, about or 6 frames. And going from the 16-inch, you could really consider this being thermal throttling, perhaps, in the 14-inch. Let's just take a look at the Tomb Raider at the bottom with the teal versus the purple, 90 to 106. That's a 10% improvement. So there's a lot of factors in play here, but if you're deciding to get the most out of your device, you could probably go with the 16-inch, the M2, which would then be the purple versus the red. You get 106 FPS versus 83 FPS in Tomb Raider. So having the same exact chip but in a bigger model, you're getting 20% boost there. And then the previous form factor from the M2 Max to the M1 Max, you're getting a 6% FPS. So basically, what that means to me is that if you want to stick with the 14-inch for travel purposes, you're probably better off going with M1 Pro, or M1 Max if you really need the bump from M1 Pro. But the difference in this form factor at the 14-inch was really limited by, I think, the form. So you're probably going to see the best scaling in the 16-inch. So more things to consider depending on what your needs are. For me, if I was going to choose a device, which I mentioned in the beginning of this video of going to Australia, doing more traveling, I'm really going to be deciding between a used or new from Costco $500 discount that you could get the M1 Pro 14-inch, or going up to M2 Pro. You will be able to get some 60 FPS gaming, but just something to consider. And I would not do the M2 Max in the 14-inch. Lastly, in this video, the important performances he puts out is the Blender and Xcode WebKit. So this more or less tests the CPU. So you can see the differences here as well, comparing the M1 Pro and M1 Max versus the M2 Pro and M2 Max. You should definitely check out his full video and his takes on things, because he has more intimate knowledge with his testing methodology. But from my views of the video, I couldn't tell exactly I'm pretty sure that these were all the 16-inch models that he does for the previous generation and compare, except for the segment that I just did. But we could say here that the purple M2 Max and M2 Pros are significantly, or I don't know about significantly, but they are faster, right? So M1 Pro at 19, now down 4 minutes in Xcode WebKit build to 14 minutes, and the M2 Max not faring too well. But interestingly, here you can see does test at 96 gigabytes compared to the blue M2 Pro. So you might be pretty good off getting the baseline M2 Pro that starts at $2,000. So if you guys are not on Reddit, it's just pretty much a popular website. I'm sure most people have heard of it, but there is an R Apple subreddit, and they just posted their thread about 2 hours ago about all of the unboxings, impressions, and things that you may want to see if you are deciding to get the MacBooks this year. And of course, there is the M2 Mini, which I do not plan to review. I do plan to get the 14-inch or 16-inch M2 Max, still deciding, or may even just do the M2 Pro. However, as you can see, all the videos are out from most of the main reviewers as well as the articles. And so I just wanted to congregate and put all the information here. And the long and the short of it is if you just read all these comments and see what people are saying, is that I think this top comment sums it up pretty much well. If you already own an M1 device, you do not necessarily need to upgrade. You could wait for the M3 to come out, which will be on a 3 nanometer process. But if you're coming from Intel or maybe have never experienced Apple Silicon yet, you may want to check out these devices because of all the goodies that they have, and they are marginally better at 20% for most of the scalings of these devices. There was a comment here that someone pointed out from the M2 Max testing is that they found that the M2 Max machines fans were louder than previous generation. So that may be something to look out for as people do further tests. I expect to pick mine up tomorrow to do my usual tests of the video games, and I don't really do video exports, so pretty much you'll see WoW, Dota 2, League of Legends. So that's what you'll expect from here. And then, kind of on a note from reading all these reviews, and if you're deciding to buy this machine, I think the perfect device would be either at Costco, they're still selling the M1 Pro 14-inch, which will run those particular video games fairly well. And then if you want kind of a little bit of spec bump, you could get these new devices if you're planning to run those devices or those games. That would be the M1 Pro. And for the most part, if you are just a average consumer, I don't really see the need to get the M2 Maxes, either 16-inch or 14-inch. As we can see here, we have a YouTuber testing out Resident Evil 2. They're getting 150 frames per second, which is a bump up again from the M1 Max. And of course, that game runs pretty well on all the Apple Silicon devices. So I'd expect as these devices keep coming out, and maybe Apple is going to invest in some developers pushing out the Apple Silicon native content that runs on Metal so that you could get this game performance on this great device. It's not much else to say there, folks. It's something that you may expected from previous laptop generational upgrades and improvements. This one falls under not a so much major gap, because when Apple Silicon devices released a year ago, it was the energy efficiency and the performance that they switched from Intel to ARM really got people excited. And now, even though that there is still just the marginal improvements, depending on where you're at, you could see that some of the consumer hype has died down. And especially because you now could compare this device to previous generations, where the M1 Pro and M1 Maxes are still very good devices, and you could pick them up refurbished on the Apple Store for about $400 cheaper. And even still now at Costco, you could get them about $500 discounted. That may be something that some users in this market are looking to get. So, of course, I'll be making some of the reviews when I pick up that device. I know I had a poll out where you guys wanted to see the M2 Max. Still considering doing that poll, but to be honest, I'm thinking about having this device as more of a long-term review, which then, I'm about to go to Australia for a month, so I could do a whole review there on hitting the road, being in a van. Um, you know, some people's workflows are like that where they don't need to plug in, and we'll see how it goes. But for the most part, these reviews look promising and seems to be a great upgrade for people coming from Intel devices. Until I get my hands on one, which should be tomorrow, won't get some of those detailed gaming thoughts and outputs out from there. So until tomorrow, expect to see more reviewers post stuff online, and hopefully this video gives a quick rundown and hopefully another buying decision input for you as you decide to either pick up this device or hop onto the Apple ecosystem. Till next time, guys, take care.